The clock struck 12, and the city softened into a hush, as if the world itself had fallen into a secret conversation with the stars. Under the velvet sky, Aria walked slowly along the quiet riverside, her footsteps echoing against the cobblestones. The air was cool, scented faintly with jasmine and rain, and the faint ripples on the water shimmered under the pale moonlight. It was the kind of night that felt alive, breathing, whispering, remembering. Aria's heart beat fast, not from fear, but from the anticipation of what was to come. She had promised herself she would never return here, never reopen the chapter that had once broken her, but love, like midnight, had a way of pulling her back when she least expected it. Somewhere beyond the curve of the river, she knew he was waiting, Ethan. The name still carried a sting, a sweetness, 1,000 unsaid words. Their story had ended 2 years ago, yet somehow, it hadn't. Every song, every silence, every dream had led her back to this moment, as if destiny had been quietly writing its own sequel. She stopped by the bridge where they used to meet, her reflection trembling in the dark water below. The moonlight touched her face gently, tracing the sadness in her eyes. She was beautiful in that quiet, aching way, long dark hair falling over her shoulders, a soft white dress fluttering around her knees. The kind of beauty that wasn't made for crowds but for moments like this, when the world stood still to look at her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the old silver locket he once gave her. Inside, a photo, faded, smiling, forever young, stared back. Her breath hitched. It wasn't just the memory of love that hurt, it was the realization that some part of her still belonged to that night when he whispered that he would love her beyond tomorrow. The sound of footsteps made her heart stop. She turned, and there he was, Ethan, standing in the soft moonlight, his eyes carrying the same intensity that had once melted her defenses. He hadn't changed much, the same rugged jawline, the same calm fire in his gaze, but something deeper now, something touched by time and regret. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was charged, heavy with the ghosts of everything left unsaid. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was charged, heavy with the ghosts of everything left unsaid. "You came," he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth that reached through the cold night. Aria swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded, her lips parting slightly. "I told myself I wouldn't," she whispered. "But I did." Ethan smiled faintly, that same smile that once could light up her entire world, and took a small step closer. "You always come back to the places your heart remembers," he said. The simplicity of it cut through her like poetry. For a moment, she wanted to run, to escape the emotions flooding through her, but she couldn't. Midnight had wrapped its arms around them, refusing to let go. They stood in silence, watching the river flow, the wind playing with her hair. In that fragile stillness, it felt as if time had bent, bringing their past and present into one perfect, painful heartbeat. Aria finally found her voice, soft and trembling.
Do you ever think about that night?
"Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. Ethan's eyes softened, and he looked up at the stars before answering. "Every night," he said quietly,
Every night.
"because that was the night I realized I could lose everything, and I did." His words hung in the air like a confession to the moon. Aria's eyes glistened, her heart caught between forgiveness and fear. The city lights shimmered faintly in the distance, but here, under the quiet heavens, only truth mattered. The world had faded, there was only him, her, and the unspoken story that still lived between their heartbeats. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of years, memories, and the ache of everything left undone. The night air moved around them, cool and tender, wrapping them in a fragile stillness that neither dared to break. Aria looked down, her lashes casting soft shadows on her cheeks as the river's reflection danced across her face. "I told myself I was over you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the night. "But every time I saw the moon, I remembered that it was under this light you promised me forever." Ethan took a slow breath, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his coat, as if to hide the tremor that ran through them. "Forever," he repeated, his tone thick with
I thought I could keep
it.
it.
But life, it had other plans. Aria's heart clenched at the sound of his voice, familiar, broken, and still capable of undoing her with just a word. She took a step closer, the sound of her heels soft on the stone path. The distance between them felt like a heartbeat away, and yet oceans wide. You could have fought harder, she said, her eyes glistening. You could have stayed. Her words were sharp, but her voice cracked on the last syllable, betraying the love that still lingered beneath her pain. Ethan's eyes softened. I tried, he said quietly. Every night after you left, I tried. But I was a fool. I thought walking away would save us both. He looked at her, his gaze trembling. It didn't. It just taught me what it feels like to breathe without living. For a moment, neither moved. The world seemed suspended, the wind pausing, the moon leaning closer to listen. Then, slowly, Ethan reached out. His fingers brushed against hers, barely, gently, but it was enough to send a shiver through both of them. The touch was hesitant, like two souls learning to meet again after lifetimes apart. Aria's breath hitched. She wanted to pull away, yet her body betrayed her heart. Their fingers intertwined naturally, like they never forgot the way they fit. Do you still love me? She asked softly, her eyes lifting to meet his. The question trembled in the air like a fragile flame, vulnerable to the faintest wind. Ethan didn't answer with words. Instead, his hand tightened around hers, his thumb tracing the lines of her palm as if memorizing them again. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, raw. Every day. Every minute. Even when I tried not to. Aria's chest rose and fell rapidly, her heart aching with both longing and disbelief. Then why didn't you come back? She asked, tears slipping down her cheeks. Ethan reached out, brushing one away with his thumb. Because I thought you deserved better than the broken man I was, he said. But now I see, maybe love isn't about perfection. Maybe it's about showing up, even when you're falling apart. His honesty cracked something open inside her. She inhaled deeply, the night air sharp and real in her lungs. She had spent 2 years building walls around her heart, convincing herself she was healed, but now, standing before him, with the stars watching silently above, she felt those walls crumble. The river whispered softly beside them, and in its rhythm, something shifted. Aria stepped closer, so close that she could feel the warmth of his breath mingling with hers. The space between them dissolved, and their eyes locked, searching, forgiving, remembering. You still wear the same perfume, Ethan murmured, his voice trembling slightly. Jasmine and rain. Aria gave a small, tearful smile. You still notice everything. A faint laugh escaped him, but it faded quickly, replaced by something deeper, yearning, raw and undeniable. He lifted a hand to her face, his fingers tracing her jawline as if afraid she might vanish. I've imagined this moment 1,000 times, he said softly. And every time, it felt like a dream I'd never wake from. The night wrapped around them like silk, gentle, endless, and filled with the quiet hum of a world that no longer mattered. The river shimmered with reflections of the moon, painting silver streaks on their skin as they stood close, their breaths mingling in the cool air. Aria could feel the warmth of Ethan's heartbeat through his shirt, steady and familiar, like a melody she had once known by heart but had long forgotten the tune of. His hand rested softly against the small of her back, not claiming, not forcing, just there, a silent reminder that even after all this time, he still remembered how to hold her. The closeness was intoxicating, not in its heat, but in its truth. For the first time in years, she didn't feel lonely. She felt found. Do you ever wonder what we could have been? She asked quietly, her voice breaking the tender silence between them. Ethan smiled faintly, his gaze lingering on her lips before lifting to her eyes. Every day, he admitted. Sometimes I think about how different things would be if I hadn't walked away that night. If I'd just held your hand a little tighter. His words trembled with regret, and Aria felt a sharp ache in her chest, not because of what he said, but because she knew she had asked herself the same question countless times. You broke me, she whispered. And yet, you're the only one who ever knew how to put me back together. Ethan's eyes softened, glistening with emotion. Then let me try again, he said. Let me fix what I broke, even if it takes the rest of my life. For a long moment, she said nothing. The world seemed to shrink until it was only them, two silhouettes beneath the moon, breathing the same fragile air. The pain between them was heavy, but so was the love, and in that delicate balance, something beautiful bloomed. Aria leaned her head against his chest, and Ethan exhaled softly, his arms circling her like a promise. You still fit here, he murmured, almost to himself. Like you never left. She smiled faintly, her voice muffled against him. Maybe I never did. They stood there in silence, hearts beating in unison, the sound of the river like a lullaby that only they could hear. The world beyond the bridge didn't exist anymore, not the city lights, not the ticking clocks, not the years they had lost. There was only this, a fragile eternity in the arms of the person they had never stopped loving. When she finally looked up, her eyes glowed with a mixture of tears and longing. We can't go back to what we were, she said softly. Too much has changed. Ethan nodded slowly, his thumb brushing a tear from her cheek. I don't want what we were, he replied. I want what we can be now, real, imperfect, but ours. His words hung in the night like a vow, and for the first time, Aria didn't doubt them. There was something different in his voice, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. He wasn't the boy she once loved, he was the man who had learned what losing her truly meant. She felt her heart open, cautious but willing, like a door she'd kept locked too long. You always knew how to say the right things, she murmured. Ethan smiled, a little sadly. Only because you always made me want to mean them. The wind picked up, carrying with it the soft fragrance of rain and jasmine, the scent that always followed them, even in memory. A light drizzle began to fall, cool and tender, speckling their faces and hair. Aria laughed softly, the sound breaking through the heaviness like sunlight through clouds. Ethan laughed too, brushing droplets from her lashes. You used to love the rain, he said. Still do, she replied. It hides the tears. Their laughter faded into quiet smiles, and then, without thinking, Ethan cupped her face in his hands and kissed her again, deeper this time, slower, the kind of kiss that spoke of years of silence and the courage to finally speak. It wasn't desperate, it was deliberate, reverent. Every second of it said, I missed you. I'm sorry. I still love you. When they parted, Aria's breath trembled, her hands still resting on his chest. This feels like a dream, she whispered. Then don't wake up yet, he murmured back, pressing his forehead against hers. The drizzle turned into soft rain, and instead of running for shelter, they stayed, laughing, crying, holding on to each other like the world might end if they let go. The river glowed like liquid silver beneath the moonlight, and the night became their witness. Two souls, once broken, now finding wholeness again in the simplest thing, love that refused to die. As the rain fell harder, Ethan shrugged off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. You'll get cold, he said softly. Aria smiled, her eyes warm and alive. Not tonight, she whispered. Tonight, I feel everything. And as the midnight sky wept above them, they walked hand in hand along the river, leaving behind the ghosts of what was, and stepping, trembling but fearless, into what could be. The rain poured harder, wrapping the world in a shimmering curtain of silver. The city beyond the river blurred into a soft haze of lights, and every sound, the whispering wind, the tapping drops, the faint rustle of trees, blended into a quiet symphony. Aria's hair clung to her face, the white fabric of her dress soaked through and translucent against her skin. Ethan gently took her hand, his touch warm despite the chill, and led her toward an old riverside gazebo, the same one where they had once carved their initials years ago. The wooden beams had aged, moss climbing up the corners, but it still stood, their silent witness from another time. You remember this place? He asked, his voice carrying a softness that made her chest tighten. Aria smiled faintly through the rain. How could I forget? This is where you first said you loved me. Ethan's eyes softened, his expression caught between nostalgia and regret. And where I should have promised never to let you go. Inside the gazebo, the air was cool but dry, scented with rain-soaked wood and the faint sweetness of wildflowers drifting from the nearby garden. Aria stood near the edge, watching droplets slide down from the roof like tiny diamonds. Her heart was racing, not just from the cold but from the nearness of him, the same man who had once known her deepest fears, her smallest joys, and every secret smile she tried to hide. Ethan took off his coat again, this time placing it carefully around her shoulders. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, lingering just long enough to make her shiver. You're still the same, he said quietly. Still beautiful, even when the world's falling apart around you. Aria looked up, her eyes glimmering with tears. And you're still the man who knows how to make me fall apart just by looking at me. Their gazes locked, the air thick with memories and something unspoken, that electric pull neither of them could ever truly escape. For a moment, they said nothing. The rain outside became their soundtrack, the steady rhythm syncing with the beat of their hearts. Aria took a slow breath and sat on the wooden bench, her fingers tracing the old carving of their initials A+E. The sight made her smile bittersweetly. "We were so young," she murmured. "So sure the world would bend for us." Ethan sat beside her, close enough that their knees brushed. "Maybe it still can," he said softly. She looked at him, surprised. "After everything?" He nodded. "Especially after everything." His hand found hers again, their fingers intertwining naturally, as if no time had passed at all. "You taught me what love is, Aria," he said. "Not the kind that ends when things get hard, but the kind that waits, quietly, patiently, even when it hurts." Aria's eyes filled again, her heart aching from the tenderness of his words. She turned her face slightly, her voice trembling. "I used to hate you," she whispered. "For leaving. For making me believe I wasn't enough." Ethan's jaw tightened, pain flashing through his eyes. "I hated myself too," he admitted. "Every day I tried to build a life without you, and every night I'd wake up wishing I could undo everything." He reached out, his thumb brushing her cheek, wiping away the tear that escaped. "If I could go back, I'd fight harder. For you. For us." His hand lingered on her skin, and Aria leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. "Then fight now," she whispered. "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't still love you." The world seemed to still in that moment. Ethan exhaled shakily, his forehead pressing against hers, and the warmth of his breath mingled with hers. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that," he murmured. His lips brushed hers, soft, trembling, reverent, and the world fell away once more. This kiss was different from before, deeper, slower, carrying years of pain, forgiveness, and devotion. It wasn't just desire, it was surrender. Aria's fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer as if she feared he might disappear again. His hands cradled her face, his touch gentle but sure. The sound of rain surrounded them, its rhythm merging with their hearts, and for a few precious seconds, the world outside ceased to exist. When they finally parted, the air was thick with the quiet after a storm, not just of rain, but of emotion. Aria's cheeks were flushed, her lips trembling with both tears and laughter. "We're really doing this," she said softly. Ethan smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "We always were," he said. "We just forgot how to find our way back." Outside, the rain began to ease, the clouds parting just enough for the moon to peek through again, casting a silvery glow on them. Aria leaned her head on his shoulder, their fingers still intertwined. "Maybe midnight isn't an ending after all," she whispered. "Maybe it's just the beginning of another day." Ethan pressed a kiss to her forehead, his voice low. "Then let's start it together." And so, wrapped in the quiet aftermath of the storm, two hearts that had once broken beyond repair found their rhythm again, not in grand gestures, but in the stillness of being seen, held, and forgiven. The night stretched endlessly before them, full of soft promises and new beginnings, as the last drops of rain slid down the old wooden roof, each one echoing the truth they both finally understood: love doesn't fade with time, it waits for the right hour to return. They sat like that for a while, saying nothing. The quiet between them wasn't awkward anymore, it was peace, the kind that comes after storms, after tears, after years of searching for home and realizing it was never a place, but a person. Aria traced small patterns on Ethan's hand, her touch light, her voice soft. "Do you ever wonder why we met again?" she asked. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe because we weren't finished," he said. "Maybe love has its own clock, it doesn't care about hours or years. It just waits until we're ready." Aria smiled, her eyes shining. "Then midnight wasn't the end of us," she whispered. "No," he replied, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "It was just the beginning we didn't know how to keep." As the sunlight grew stronger, spilling over the river like liquid gold, the world seemed to awaken around them, birds beginning to sing, trees rustling softly, the faint hum of life returning to the city beyond. But inside that little wooden gazebo, time still held its breath. Ethan turned to face her fully, his expression tender. "If I asked you to stay, would you?" he asked quietly. Aria hesitated only for a heartbeat before nodding. I never really left, she said. You've been here, she touched his chest gently all along. His heart beat faster under her palm, and for a moment, the emotion in his eyes was almost too much to bear. He pulled her close, his arms encircling her as though the universe might try to steal her away again. She melted into him, her face buried in his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the rhythm that had once been her favorite sound. They stayed like that as the sun climbed higher, bathing the world in gold. The river sparkled, the last traces of night fading into the promise of a new day. Aria looked up at him, her eyes full of quiet strength. You know what's funny, she said softly. We always thought our story ended the night we said goodbye. Ethan smiled gently. Maybe real love doesn't end. It just pauses, waiting for the right moment to continue. Aria's lips curved into a faint, tearful smile. Then this is our continuation. He leaned in, kissing her forehead, his voice barely a whisper. And our forever. For a long moment, they simply held each other as the sunlight poured over them, washing away the remnants of sorrow and fear. The world outside their embrace could change 1,000 times, but this love was untouchable. It wasn't loud or perfect or easy, it was quiet, patient, and real. The kind of love that doesn't fade with time, only deepens. As they finally stood to leave, hand in hand, Aria turned for one last look at the river. The water glistened beneath the morning light, carrying their reflections side by side, not two halves searching anymore, but one whole found again. Goodbye, midnight, she whispered softly. Thank you for bringing him back. Ethan looked at her, smiling as he laced their fingers tighter. No more goodbyes, he said. Just tomorrows. And as they walked together down the quiet path, their laughter soft against the morning air, the sun rose fully behind them, bold and golden, illuminating everything in its path. The river sparkled, the air hummed with life, and somewhere within that light, the echoes of their love remained timeless, infinite, and true. Because some stories aren't written in days or years. Some are written in moments like this, where love finds its way back at last, beneath the fading stars and the promise of a brand new dawn.